Gojo Satoru rewrote the rules of Jujutsu sorcery the moment he was born, and it took the strongest sorcerer in history amplified by a bunch of techniques to finally take him down. But for a lot of fans, that ending didn't just feel sad, it felt straight up wrong for Gojo to go out the way he did. So, in today's video, I'll be exploring an insane alternate timeline where Gojo is reborn with his powers and memories. The story begins with Sukuna's world-cutting slash, the ultimate move that countered infinity by cutting through everything that exists in its path with no distinction. In the original timeline, Gojo went into the afterlife following his attack, and was greeted by his allies and old friends. But this time, something changes. The last hollow purple he used to take out Maharaga went beyond just warping space and time. It tore the fabric of reality itself to pull Gojo's soul from the afterlife and transport it decades back in time, right back to his mother's womb. The newly reborn version of Gojo has only one goal in mind: defeat Sukuna when the time comes. Gojo will try to refine his powers as he grows up, but given that he was already so far beyond the rest of Jujutsu society, it's highly unlikely that he'll be getting any more powerful than he was in the original timeline. Instead, Gojo would benefit from having access to his special abilities much earlier, and I'll explore this later on in the video when he faces off against a certain Toji Fushiguro. But before we can talk about what Gojo changes about the past, we need to be completely honest about why he lost in the first place. The lazy answer is to say that Sukuna was stronger, but the fight was completely balanced even when the two sorcerers' domains clashed. Yes, Gojo got shredded by Malevolent Shrine, but he was so skilled with reverse cursed technique that he managed to reconstruct his own exhausted Limitless over and over again across the fight. The real problem was Sukuna possessing Megumi's 10 Shikigami technique. The Zenin clan only used Maharaga as a surprise weapon, but Sukuna went a step further by using Maharaga's adaptations as an instruction manual. Every time it adapted to Infinity, Blue, and Red, Sukuna was reverse engineering those adaptations directly into his own curse technique. And, of course, we can't ignore the fact that merged Beast Agito was causing carnage in the midst of all that. But here's the critical thing: none of that was inevitable. Maharaga's only in this battle because Sukuna's in Megumi's body, and that possession only stems from a chain of events that starts in Shibuya. And this brings me to Gojo's first option to eventually beat Sukuna: killing the prison realm plan at Shibuya. The Shibuya incident was a masterclass of Gojo's power, as he single-handedly dealt with Jogo, Hanami, Choso, and Mahito while also protecting the regular civilians inside the barrier. Gojo had enough and more power in reserve to beat everyone there, and only lost this battle because the prison realm and Geto's presence caught him off guard. Now, let's be precise about the mechanics here, because this matters for understanding what Reborn Gojo does differently. Prison realm needs 1 full minute to activate, and its target to stay within 4 meters. For Gojo specifically, because his 6 size processes information at superhuman speeds, a minute's worth of cognitive time passes in a flash. Kenjaku knew this, and he picked Geto's body specifically because no other face in the world could cause Gojo Satoru to lose even a second of focus. But now, Gojo's born knowing what Kenjaku looks like in Geto's body, so when the prison realm opens at his feet, he doesn't freeze, and immediately escapes its effective range. He already knows exactly where Kenjaku's standing because he's been tracking him with the 6 size the moment Kenjaku came within range, and without a single second of hesitation, Gojo hits Kenjaku with Hollow Purple, ending the sorcerer then and there. The changes here are immense because Gojo stays active through the entire Shibuya aftermath. There's no window for Sukuna to rampage through Tokyo, and without Kenjaku, there's no one to launch the culling game. More specifically, with Gojo free and active, the Jujutsu world doesn't spend 19 months in freefall. The higher-ups don't have the leverage to imprison Masamichi Yaga, and Gojo's students don't have to face special-grade threats without a safety net. Now, this is a pretty ideal scenario, but let's be real. Kenjaku probably had a backup plan in case Gojo doesn't spend a minute thinking before he reacts to the prison realm. But even if the sealing still happens, here's another way Gojo gains an advantage over Sukuna. Megumi Fushiguro must never become Sukuna's body. Here's the canon chain. In the chaos of the culling game, Sukuna forcefully takes control of Megumi's body. He then proceeds to kill Tsumiki, driving Megumi's soul into despair and gaining absolute control over the body. We already know why he picked Megumi. The 10 Shadows give Sukuna access to an entire arsenal of Shikigami he doesn't have to spend anything to use. Maharaga specifically gives him the adaptive tool he needs to beat Gojo, and Megumi doesn't have the will left to fend off Sukuna's possession like Yuji. The problem with preventing Megumi's possession is that Gojo doesn't really have any control over the situation. Gojo could go for the extreme option of making sure Yuji and Megumi never meet, but such a huge change risks changing the timeline beyond what he could reasonably predict. His other alternative is trying to teach Megumi how to resist possession, but once again, this comes down to willpower and isn't something Gojo can bank on. Okay, so then let's focus on what Gojo can control: his fight against Sukuna. What could Gojo possibly change using his foresight in order to reverse the outcome of the battle? In canon, the domain clash is a war of attrition that Gojo can't sustain. Unlimited Void and Malevolent Shrine are equally refined, and they cancel each other's guaranteed hit effect on contact. However, Sukuna's domain has an open barrier, and that lets him activate and reactivate Malevolent Shrine while slashing outside Gojo's domain radius. The result is that every time domains clash, Sukuna gets free slashes, while Gojo's technique is exhausted from sustaining Infinite Void. Gojo's forced to use Reverse Curse technique to reconstruct his own brain while still being slashed, and while his cursed energy reserves are massive, they're not infinite. But the only reason Sukuna was able to exhaust Gojo with this strategy was the information asymmetry between them. In the original timeline, Gojo doesn't fully understand the open barrier binding vow trick until he's already in the middle of it. But our reborn version of Gojo had a lifetime to learn from his mistakes, and a full 19 months in the prison realm to analyze the fight he lost over and over with the perfect memory that comes with the 6 eyes. So this time, when Sukuna deploys his open barrier domain, Gojo doesn't use the wide deployment of Infinite Void that's vulnerable to external slashes. He shrinks the domain immediately, making it a narrow kill chamber. More critically, the first time Unlimited Void lands clean, Gojo doesn't give Sukuna time to recover. No cursed spirit can bear the full force of Gojo's domain, and while using it at a maximum output might be suicidal, Gojo will end up defeating Sukuna for good. But what about Maharaga, you might ask? Well, if Sukuna never has the time to deploy the 10 Shadows technique, it doesn't really make a difference if he has it or not. And Gojo already knows that the King of Curses starts out with his traditional curse techniques. And finally, I've saved the best for last, because Gojo has one more option to avoid losing to Sukuna in the Shinjuku Showdown. But before that, we need to go all the way back to 2006, when 2 second-year students at Tokyo Jujutsu High were given an escort assignment. Riko Amanai is identified as the new star plasma vessel and is scheduled to merge with Master Tengen. She chooses not to merge, but before we can even see the consequences of that decision, Toji Fushiguro shoots her in the head. In the aftermath, Gojo and Geto stand in the House of the Star, where ordinary human beings are applauding the murder of a 14-year-old girl for religious reasons. This was the moment when Geto lost all faith in humanity, and his eventual death at Gojo's hands gave Kenjaku a perfect vessel. Kenjaku inherited not just cursed spirit manipulation, but 12 years of memories of Satoru Gojo, which gave him all the information he needed to set the prison realm trap. Without Geto's body, Kenjaku's plans became that much more difficult to execute. So, this means Gojo has 2 ways of foiling Kenjaku's plans at the outset. First, he could save Riko's life, but this is a pretty tall order because Toji Fushiguro at his peak, with the inverted Spear of Heaven, is on a different level from regular sorcerers. But Reborn Gojo knows exactly when and where Toji will strike, and in a one-on-one battle, he would have the advantage thanks to Infinity and Reverse Curse technique. If Riko lives, the cult's plan fails, the Time Vessel Association loses its victory, and more importantly, the specific trauma that starts Geto's spiral never happens. But if Riko is somehow killed, Gojo must deal with Kenjaku, and the best way is to kill the ancient sorcerer the moment he body hops. Gojo can stake out the location of Geto's corpse, wait for the possession to happen, and end it within hours. The complication here is that Kenjaku is nearly impossible to kill, but if Gojo's waiting at the moment of transfer, with full knowledge of what's coming, the window to destroy the brain before it finds a new host is just wide enough to be exploitable. But that leaves us with one final question. Which approach is Gojo most likely to take? Well, chances are he'll try all of them, because if there's one thing we know about Gojo, it's that he hates letting innocents die. But what do you think? Is there a different approach Gojo could take to defeat Sukuna? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.